With the next segment, I think we should start with the game that was the first game of the day for the SEC, and of course there was Alabama, Wisconsin, but the game that was closer was LSU versus SC. When you watch that game, there's 79,000 in attendance in Columbia. Game days there. What did you kind of leave with your thoughts, feeling wise?
Yeah, I felt like South Carolina had it the whole game. Like they were the ones in control of the game. LSU fighting back. But you can only control what you control. South Carolina, you can be mad about the refs. You can be mad about the 2 picks getting called back. That horse collar and then the blindside block. But I think South Carolina looked good. I think that LSU right now is not necessarily a good team at all. They won the game, but I don't think that they really won the game when it came down to the actual football being played. Like they didn't do what they needed to do to win the game. It just so happened to work out in their favor.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you. When I look at this game, I feel like I should be talking about LSU because they won, but I want to put the spotlight on USC. That running game is so impressive. Raheem Sanders is in that RB1 conversation. They average 5.9 yards a carry against a defense that's still bottom in the SEC right now, but they're usually on average giving up about, we'll say, they gave up 219 in 2 games. They gave up 243 rushing yards in 1 game to South Carolina. That has to improve, and it says more about South Carolina's upside with the running game with Lenore Sellers and with Raheem Sanders and what they're able to do. What I'd like to see improvement on when it comes to for South Carolina was their third down performance, right? 3 of 12 on third down. Those were situations where it took away momentum and it gave it back to LSU, who has enough weapons where they can make plays. On the LSU side offensively, not the most impressive performance by the SEC passing touchdown leader in Garrett Nussmeier right now. He had 2 touchdowns, but he had 1 pick, could have had 3 potentially. Kyron Lacey had 1 touchdown, but SC was able to slow him down to only 62 yards and a couple receptions. And so it left me with the question of, this is a win, but does Brian Kelly deserve more respect? Like he does find a way to win these games, but I don't know.
To me, no, I don't think so. Because you are the head coach of this team, and then in the press conference after the game, he wants to talk about they're struggling because they have 2 first-year coordinators, and take some of that ownership because your team was not ready to necessarily play ball. If it wasn't towards some of those things you're talking about, South Carolina, they need to fix the third downs. I think there were some things to clean up. When you have the momentum, they've had multiple ineligible receiver downfield penalties. They had, the OPI there on, 4th and 5. The fumble from Ashford on the 12-yard line. So there's those things that South Carolina needs to clean up. So LSU, you weren't really in the position to win the game. South Carolina kind of lost the game. So I don't think Brian Kelly necessarily deserves his respect. I think he's closer towards, the bottom half of the SEC than the top half right now. Like he's closer to, Mississippi State than he is to Georgia in my book with this LSU team. That's just how they're playing on the field, right? Like they're dead last in the SEC in points given up. And that's, giving up 20 plus to, to Nicholls State. They've given up 81 points on the year. We saw the picks, the horse collar, sure, you can call that. He wouldn't have thrown it if he wasn't getting horse collared. But the other one, that's a pick 6 through and through. The penalty had nothing to do with it. Yep. Sure, it's a good call. You don't blindside, don't hit the quarterback like that. There's no reason to do it. But it's a self-inflicted loss from South Carolina. So I don't think LSU deserves the respect. Brian Kelly doesn't deserve the respect until it's earned in this season, not from what he's done in anything past.
Well, Bayou Bengal fans, let me read you some stats and then we can kind of dig into this further. So, 10-3 the last 2 seasons, 2 bowl wins, 22-8 overall at LSU. But he wasn't brought here to have 10-win seasons. He was brought in. We talk about the chef analogy. This is a great kitchen. This is a great restaurant. They're supposed to get the best chefs. He is supposed to be propelling them to where they're competing similar to what they did 2 years ago against Alabama to play in the SEC West championship at the time, or for that spot. They're supposed to be competing for SEC championships. Nothing about that performance screamed SEC championship performance. You saw it last year when they lost to Ole Miss 55-49, but you got a glimpse of it positively when they beat Missouri. But you're not expecting him to be beating the lower top tier of the SEC or the mid to lower tier of the SEC like this, you want them to be in these games dominantly winning when you have guys like Kyron Lacey, when South Carolina for the third straight game has turned the ball over once again, right? Like giving you chances to win. And then on top of just the pandering of my family,
Yeah.
he's not a local guy. So if you're not going to win convincingly and you're going to place the blame on your coordinators that you ultimately played a role in bringing in, we need to see more on the field. And I put less on the players. I put more on Brian Kelly. So I think he deserves respect, but respect is earned when you beat the top tier teams. And LSU is accustomed to beating top tier teams in a very convincing manner. And no shade to South Carolina, but they're not in that class now as of yet. And they really left the stadium, William Bryce, with a gift, in my opinion.
And looking at LSU's schedule, there's the opportunity for them to make the playoffs. They don't play the hardest schedule in the SEC. Yeah, they have Ole Miss, they have Alabama and Oklahoma, but aside from that, they're playing Florida, they're playing Vanderbilt. So you need to be taking games like this, and you need to be winning convincingly. I'll say positives. There are some positives for LSU. I don't want it to be only talk down on LSU season, although I will say Alabama's game in Death Valley in week 11 is starting to feel a little bit less scary. It's starting to feel like, any other week, but maybe I'm not speaking too soon.
Talk your junk.
Yeah. Positives for LSU. You lose John Emery early in the year, before the season starts. That's a huge hit. And we haven't really seen them up to this point be able to establish the running game. Caden Durham only had one carry coming into this week, almost had 100 yards. So they're starting to figure that out, and South Carolina's run defense is solid. So they were able to get that on that South Carolina defense. So be happy about that. Be happy about the grit and the comeback from your team. You can only play the guy in front of you. They did get forced to fumble there in their own red zone to lead to a score. So you do have positives there from this LSU team. Although I just need to see it. I need to see it put together. UCLA next week, who is an inferior opponent, how they should be to LSU, but now I'm not looking at it so convincingly.
Right. And this LSU team is still dangerous. You talked about Caden Durham. Props to the freshman from Oklahoma City. Getting in there, 2 touchdowns. You said almost 100 yards. He had 96. That was what was needed because we didn't really see much from Xavier Brown. But, in LSU running back room fashion, it was great to see Caden step up as a freshman and put up those yards against a really tough SC defense, a tough passing defense. I think there's a lot of opportunity, but they're still finding a way to win. So optimistically, it's like if this is your lowest and you're still winning or you're still in these games, if you clean these things up, you have games like UCLA and South Alabama to really clean up where you see holes and go from there. So,
yeah. So Akron for South Carolina next week, and UCLA for LSU. Hopefully, both wins for these two teams, and they'll get back on track. LSU coming off of a close win here, and then South Carolina coming off of that tough loss at home. So. Good game though. Good game. Fun to watch.
Great game. Really fun to watch. I'm sure it was extra fun for you knowing that on the other channel, Alabama was taking care of business.
Yeah.